Gopi Jana Bala Girivaradari Gopi Jana Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kuja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari John Vishnupada from Hamsa, Free Rajakacharya, Sotars after his divine grace, and Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrind ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki, Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki, Shri Mayapur Dham ki, Ganga Mai ki, Yamuna Mai ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulsi Devi ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samaveda Bhakta Vrind ki, Nita Gaur Pranandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Rama, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Todayam Udirayat Nastu Preshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki Foresight in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest. One should offer spiritual basis unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, this supreme being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Shri Vyasa, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as a global fact. Thank you for the water, Lily. Yeah, I'm forgetting what to do. It's been a long time since I've done this. But yeah, I might be a little rusty today, but it's good to be back in the game. I've had way too much tamagun in my life. All right, so today we're going to be doing text 19 and 20. Just because I read 19 and I read 20, and I really liked 20, so I'm doing 19 and 20. 19 is short purport. All right. Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Rituno Paritarhanam
Rituno Paritarhanam
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Rituno Paritarhanam
Rituno Paritarhanam
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Rituno Paritarhanam
Rituno Paritarhanam
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Ishan
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Rituno Paritarhanaha
Rituno Paritarhanam
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah Bhagavanata Vishvatma Rituno Paritarhanam Samujihanaya Bhaktya Grihita Charanam Bhujah Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Rituno Paritarhanam
Rituno Paritarhanaha
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma Rituno Paritarhanam
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma Rituno Paritarhanam
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Bhagavanata Vishvatma
Rituparana Partarthana
Rituno Paritarhanam
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Samujihanaya Bhaktya
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Grihita Charanam Bhujah
Okay, word for word. Is that everyone? Okay. Word for word. Bhagavan,
Bhagavan
the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
the Supreme Personality of Godhead
Ata,
Atha
thereupon.
thereupon
Vishva Atma,
Vishvatma
the Super Soul.
the Super Soul
Prituna,
Prituna
by King Prithu.
by King Prithu
Uparita,
Uparita
being offered.
being offered
Arhana,
Arhana
all the paraphernalia for worship.
all the paraphernalia for worship
Samujihanaya,
Samujihanaya
gradually increased.
gradually increased
Bhaktya,
Bhaktya
whose devotional service.
whose devotional service
Grihita,
Pita,
taken.
taken.
Charana Ambuja,
Charana,
his lotus feet.
his lotus feet.
Translation by His Divine Grace. His Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. King Prithu abundantly worshipped the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was so merciful to him. While worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Prithu Maharaj gradually increased his ecstasy in devotional service. Purport. When various ecstasies appear in the body of a devotee, it is to be understood that his devotional service has become perfect. There are many types of transcendental ecstasies in the forms of crying, laughing, perspiring, falling down, and crying like a madman. All these symptoms are sometimes visible on the body of a devotee. They are called Asta Sattvika Vikara, which means 8 kinds of transcendental transformations. They are never to be imitated, but when a devotee actually becomes perfect, these symptoms are visible on his body. The Lord is Bhaktavatsala, which means he is inclined toward his pure devotee, Bhakta. Therefore, the transcendental ecstatic transaction between the Supreme Lord and his devotee is never like the activities of this material world. And I'll go ahead and do 20. Pastana Bimukopi. Pastana Bimukopi. Sorry, I think we changed. No, it's the same meter. Sorry about it. Pastana Bimukopi Nam Anugraha Vilambita. Pashyan Padma Bala Saksho Na Prataste Suritsatam. Translation. The Lord was just about to leave, but because he was so greatly inclined toward the behavior of King Prithu, he did not depart. Seeing the behavior of Maharaj Prithu with his lotus eyes, he was detained because he is always the well-wisher of his devotees. Purport. The words Surit Satam are very significant. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always very inclined toward his devotee and is always thinking of the devotee's well-being. This is not partiality. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is equal to everyone, Samoham Sarvabhuteshu. But one who particularly engages in his devotional service, he is very much inclined. In another place, the Lord says that a devotee always exists in his heart, and he also exists in the heart of the heart of the devotee. This special inclination of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pure devotee is not unnatural, nor is it partiality. For example, sometimes a father has several children, but he has special affection for one child who is very much inclined toward him. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Tesham satatayuktanam vajatam pratipurvakam dami bhuri yogam tam yenamamu payantite. Those who constantly engage in the devotional service of the Lord in love and affection are directly in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sitting as the Supersoul in everyone's heart. The Lord is not far away from the devotee. He is always in everyone's heart, but only the devotee can realize the Lord's presence, and thus he is directly connected, and he takes instruction from the Lord at every moment. Therefore, there is no chance of a devotee being in error, nor is there any partiality on the part of the Lord for his pure devotees. Om Genetrinam Nishaganajana Shlakaya Chakshurumritamina Tasashi Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakarami Adinati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shiguru Shigata Parakamalam Shiguru Vaishnavisha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Vaganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savabhutam Vijana Sahitam Shri Radha Krishna Sahagana Ladita Shri Visham Vitam Shri Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopi Shah Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Kurangi Radha Hey Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuve Vacha Patisnam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this part of the story of Lord Vishnu's appearance in the sacrificial arena, we're getting a glimpse of the loving exchange between the Lord and his devotee. It says in this first verse that I read, text 19, it talks about these different ecstatic symptoms that one experiences when they have perfected their devotional service. And in this material world, we experience some feelings of happiness, but these feelings of happiness are nothing compared to what one experiences when they actually come face to face with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Narada Muni, of course, when he was the son of a maidservant, and he got the association of some sadhus, and he had the remnants, and that helped him make advancement in devotional service. And then later his mother died because she was bitten by a snake. And you can imagine this little boy, he therefore then had nothing. Because it's described that, it wasn't mentioned who Narada Muni's father was at this time when he was the son of a maidservant. So he was alone. So he began to practice this meditation, and up to the point that he could see Paramatma in the heart. And when he finally did, he was feeling this great ecstasy. But one day, that vision vanished, Paramatma was in the heart. And Narada Muni opened his eyes, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead was right there. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead told him, okay, you've seen me, but for the rest of your life, rest of this lifetime, you won't have my darshan. But in the next life, he became Narada Muni, so we know there was no loss. But anyway, just that moment of association with the Lord, it was enough to carry Narada Muni all throughout his life, that he was constantly looking for that darshan, and he was experiencing these ecstatic symptoms. And so people often look at these ecstatic symptoms and they say, okay, if I find someone who's experiencing this, then I know I've found a great sadhu or a great devotee. And even I've seen in Christian churches, that I've been in, they have different denominations that I've been in certain programs where, people will be seemingly experiencing these ecstatic symptoms. So, but how is it that one really tells who advanced sadhu is? And this is described in Nectar of Devotion. Does anyone know? What is the number one way we can tell who an advanced devotee is? Because these symptoms can be faked. What is it?
But his actions don't speak.
How they spend their time. Exactly. Because all these symptoms, people can imitate them. Of course, they happen naturally when one is very advanced. But what one cannot imitate or one cannot fake is how they spend their time. What are they doing when they're outside the temple, outside the programs? And that's how you tell really how advanced they actually are. And that's how we can also see where we're at as well. It's a gauge for us. And so anyway, Prithu Maharaj, he's experiencing these symptoms because he's come in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And not only is it Maharaj Prithu who's very ecstatic, but we see that this is a reciprocal relationship. The relationship with Krishna and his devotee is not one-sided. It's not just that the devotee serves Krishna and gets, nothing back in return, or I have to serve Krishna because Krishna might get angry and then do this. You know how some different religious practices, they had to do these sacrifices to the gods because then the gods would get angry if we didn't do these sacrifices. But in bhakti, it's not this way. Not only is Prithu Maharaj feeling this ecstatic love for the Lord, but the Lord is also feeling this ecstatic love for Prithu Maharaj. It's described that he was going to depart, but he couldn't. He was detained because he's always the well-wisher of his devotees. So we can see sometimes when you go to see someone you really love, maybe you see another devotee, somebody you have great affection for, and it's time to leave, and it takes you 3 hours to say goodbye. You've had this experience. I know when Jivananda Prabhu is here, and he is sitting out there, sometimes the devotees can be up because it is very difficult to leave from that association. We say goodbye, and then we go to the parking lot, keep talking, say goodbye again, sit in the car, keep talking, say goodbye again. So there's this.
About 4 hours.
I think one devotee mentioned that they were up all night speaking ecstatic exchanges and still came to Mangalarti. But anyway, so yes, but this is bhakti. Bhakti is a personal relationship. The devotee loves the Lord, and the Lord loves the devotee so much that when the devotee's when the Lord is leaving, he doesn't want to leave. He's detained by his devotee, the well-wisher of his devotee. So this is like when Krishna went to Hastinapur to kill Jarasandha, but then also he was participating in the Rajasuya sacrifice of Yudhishthir. And he went to finally get rid of Jarasandha once and for all because, the kings, they used to send out this horse. And whoever didn't stop the horse, they accepted the king's supremacy, the king's rule. So you had one king that was kind of like the head king of all the other kings. But if they stopped the horse, that meant that, there was a challenge to the king's authority. So there had to be this fight. So when Yudhishthira was going to do his sacrifice, it was well known that Jarasandha would not accept his rule. So Krishna, being Bhaktavatsala, he wanted to attend the sacrifice, but he knew he had to get rid of Jarasandha. So he goes and he gets rid of Jarasandha, and then he goes to the sacrifice. And Krishna, out of love for his devotee Yudhishthira, he takes the position of actually washing everybody's feet in the sacrifice. And then after that whole sacrifice is over, Krishna goes to leave, but he can't because Yudhishthira wants him to stay, and therefore he stays a little bit longer. Same thing happens in the first canto with Kunti. We see that she says these beautiful prayers to Krishna, and then he's going to leave, but she stops him and says these beautiful prayers, and then that makes him stay for a little while. So we can see this great love that Krishna has for his devotees. It is said in the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna took the position of Arjuna's chariot driver, and Krishna is driving the chariot, and Arjuna is sitting above him, and he's telling Krishna which way to go by kicking him on his shoulder, left shoulder, right shoulder, like this. And at some point on this battlefield, one of Arjuna's sons, gets killed. His son with, I'm trying to think of the name. Her name starts with a U. I'm trying to think of which wife that is. But anyway, it's not Abhimanyu, it's somebody else. But anyway, when his son is killed, Arjuna is lamenting, he's crying. And during this part of the battle, Krishna comes to Arjuna, and he puts his arm around Arjuna, and he's comforting him like this, and he's also grieving with him. And then Krishna therefore takes it a step further, showing not just that he's always with his devotee, but that he's always looking out for his devotee. Because at this same part in the battle, Krishna tells Arjuna, "Hey Partha, you know, Duryodhana has these 5 very mystic arrows, and he owes you a benediction from way back when. Because way back when, the Pandavas, they were suffering in the forest before this battle started. And Duryodhana, it wasn't enough that he stole their wealth, but he had to go show it off. So he goes to the camp of the Pandavas, and he's camping right next to them. And he's got all this opulence and all the servants, and they're having one big rich people's party, as you could say, like royal party thing going on. And the Gandharvas, they came to bathe in this lake that was right next to them. And what happened was, whenever you get a lot of wealth and a lot of power, there's a tendency to become very puffed up, especially when somebody comes and you think that they're disturbing you. So even though the Gandharvas, they bathed in this lake quite often, Duryodhana, he didn't like it very much, and so he started a fight with them. But during this fight, we can see that he was really no match. He was really no match for the Gandharvas. I mean, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight type of thing. And the Gandharvas were defeating him, humiliating him, and they had him, tied up. And Yudhishthira, he saw this, and he said, "Okay, we have to go save Duryodhana." And Bhima was like, "Why do we need to go save him? He's done so many terrible things to us. Let them finish him off." And Yudhishthira told him, "Yes, this might be true, but at the end of the day, we're brothers. So in this, we're brothers. It's kind of like if somebody tries to pick on your brother, and you're like, nobody can pick on my brother but me." So Yudhishthira, he kind of had this mentality at this particular moment. So Arjuna said, "Okay, fine, we'll go save him." So they go and they save him. And then Duryodhana, he's really humiliated, because it's like when somebody you're very envious of, jealous of, he's been trying to get rid of them, and now they saved his life. So he tells Arjuna, "Okay, I owe you a benediction. So what would you like?" And Arjuna said, "I'll ask for it at another time." And so therefore, we can see that on this battle, Krishna therefore told Arjuna, "Go get these 5 arrows from Bhishma." And so Arjuna, he goes to Duryodhana's camp in the evening, because at night they would all be buddies. They would stop their fighting, and they would be kind of friendly toward each other. This was the Kshatriya way. And so Arjuna, he's going to Duryodhana's camp, and Duryodhana's thinking, "Oh, Arjuna's coming. Maybe he's coming to surrender." And Arjuna goes in, and Duryodhana's like, "Oh, Arjuna, what can I do for you?" And Arjuna tells him, "You owe me this benediction, and I think I want to claim it now. You have these 5 arrows, 5 very potent arrows." And these arrows weren't just any arrows. These arrows had been given all of Bhishma Dev's mystic potency, put into these arrows. And the reason why all this mystic potency had been put into these arrows is because Duryodhana was getting on Bhishma's case for not killing the Pandavas. He was saying, "You're very favorable towards them, getting him like this." And Bhishma said, "Okay." So he made these 5 arrows to kill the 5 Pandavas. And so Duryodhana said, "Well, let me hold on to them." And so Duryodhana's got these arrows, and now Arjuna's asking for these arrows. Duryodhana's thinking, "How did you know I had these arrows?" He said, "Krishna told me." And it's described that night, Duryodhana was thinking, maybe, just maybe, Krishna is the super soul. This Krishna, he's something else. And maybe he's super slow in everyone's heart. And it's actually said he offered this prayer to Krishna afterwards, just in case, you know. But but anyway, so Arjuna gets these arrows, and then the next morning, Bhishma comes in for these arrows. Duryodhana says, "You'll never believe what happened." Oh, what happened? Arjuna came and got the arrows from me. And Bhishma smiled because he knew somebody wants to kill you. If Krishna wants to kill you, no one can save you. And if somebody wants to save you and Krishna wants you to be killed, it won't work. So Bhishma smiled like this because he knew, oh, Krishna, this is the work of Krishna. So Duryodhana asked him, well, can you make another 5 arrows? And Bhishma said, no, I can't. I put all my power into these 5. But I promise you, today I will fight so hard that Krishna, he will have to break his promise or I will kill Arjuna. So the battle's going on like this, and Bhishma's fighting, and he's looking at where Krishna is the whole entire time, this one pointed fixed attention. And finally he gets up to Arjuna, and it's described that he even breaks Arjuna's Gandiva bow. They're both pretty powerful, you know. And then Krishna thinks, all right, I have to do something. If I don't do something, Arjuna is finished. So he jumps off the chariot, he picks up a wheel, and he's running at Bhishma. And Nick has this beautiful picture on his wall. You guys seen that picture of Krishna about to chuck this chariot wheel at Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev, while he's looking at Krishna running towards him, he's seeing this hair, the sweat, everything, and he's experiencing ecstasy over seeing this because this is his relationship with Krishna. But this story is just to show how Krishna is always with his devotee, how Krishna is always the devotee's well-wisher, you know, in all circumstances. But not just that, but the devotee is also always trying to serve Krishna, and in many ways trying to protect Krishna. Because how does Arjuna respond to this incident? Arjuna jumps down, and Arjuna grabs Krishna, and Arjuna says, no, Krishna, you cannot fight, because if you fight, everybody will think you're a liar. So the devotee here is trying to protect Krishna. So this is a sweet reciprocal exchange that in Bhakti, we're seeing this here, and you also see this on the Battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna is always protecting his devotees. Therefore, Prabhupada said in a lecture on the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in this verse where Krishna tells Arjuna, you declare it boldly, my devotee never perishes. So Prabhupada would say, so let us become Krishna's devotee. We should think, let me become Krishna's devotee. Because Krishna's devotee is never vanquished under any circumstances. Krishna is, you see, whatever a great devotee says, you know, Krishna makes sure that it comes to pass. We can also see too when Bhima, he promised to kill all the sons of the Dhritarashtra because of what they had done on the battlefield. And one thing particularly, he promised to break Duryodhana's thigh because of what Duryodhana had done to Draupadi. And so he had made this promise. But then before the battle, Duryodhana, as we know, he goes to see his mother, Gandhari. She calls him in. Son, I want to give you something. She had this mystic potency. Because she was covered her eyes her whole entire life. So she would be blind, kind of like her husband. She didn't want to be superior to her husband in any way. And because she had voluntarily blinded herself and she had this chastity, she got this great power from it. And so she wanted to give this great power and protection to her son, Duryodhana. And so she calls him in to see her, but she asks him to come undressed. So he's walking to see his mom, but he's naked. Krishna sees him. Duryodhana, what are you doing? Cover yourself, man. They said, no, my mother asked me to come, and for some reason, she asked me to come undressed. You can't go see your mother naked. That's totally against the Dharmic law. That's crazy. But she asked me to come like this. I don't know why. Well, at least cover yourself. All right. Get something, covers front part like this. Goes in to see mom. Mother lifts up her her blindfold, and she has all this power, all this Shakti, and it out of her eyes, and it hits his body, and it creates this shield over his body that he can't be killed or destroyed by anything. But because he covered this one area of his body, his thighs were not protected. So therefore, she said, "I told you to come, undressed. You covered yourself. Well, your body's protected up to this point." So therefore, we can just see how Krishna interfered to keep the vow of Bhima to crush the thigh of Duryodhana. So then also we can also take shelter in also the words of Srila Prabhupada and what he says. If we know that Krishna, he always is protecting his devotee and looking out for his devotee. Srila Prabhupada has told us that if we follow this process of Krishna consciousness, we will go back to Godhead. We follow the process that he has given us, this chanting of the 16 rounds, this hearing, the chanting, it's following the regular principles. Devotional service is guaranteed. Human writes it in Nectar of Instruction that for one who starts this path, they will be driven to success eventually. So, if you started this path of devotional service, just starting it, there's no loss. And it's, you keep it forever, whatever progress you make. Even if you go 1%, you make 1%, okay, I can't do any more because I'm too attached to material life, or I'm too attached to doing what I want to do, or I have my own plans. Okay, well then the next life you keep that 1%. But you can make so much money in this world. You can make millions and millions and millions of dollars. But at the time of death, you know what happens? Whoever your relatives around you, your children, most likely, they're just waiting for you to die so they can take your money. I once saw a bumper sticker once, said, "I'm spending my children's inheritance." Because the family is thinking, my kids are just going to waste this, and they're just waiting for me to die so they can have this money if they can go and do it. And I've seen it personally. When a relative dies in the family, how the siblings will immediately start fighting with each other over the property, over the money, over who gets what. Sometimes that's all they're thinking about, more than they're thinking about their loved one passing away. I've seen it. I think I told the story once of how my grandmother's sisters took her to court, very sisters who she had been close with her whole entire life. But when mom and dad died, my grandmother, she took care of my great-grandparents. My family, they have this thing, they don't put people in nursing homes, they take care of them. And so my grandmother, she took care of my great-grandfather. He had Alzheimer's, and simultaneously my great-grandmother, she had pancreatic cancer. So it was quite a challenging experience. And so she used some of their money to help pay for nurses to come into the house to help take care of them, because they had to be watched 24 hours. And she didn't want to put them in a nursing home, so she hired some caregivers to come help out. But then when they passed away, her sisters got very upset that she had spent their money. So, and they didn't get it as their inheritance. So they took her to court. And of course they lost. But still to this day, they don't communicate with each other over one little thing, over money like this. So my point is, you can work all your life. You can make so much money. You can get everything you've ever wanted to get. But when you die, you can't take it with you. Somebody else will take it. Even the clothes on your back, they'll be given to Goodwill. Somebody else will wear them. Somebody else will take your car. All your possessions will be divided up. They'll leave. It's kind of like the story of the king with 4 wives. And he's dying. And he calls in his first wife and says, "I'm going to the afterlife. Come with me." And she tells him, Actually, no, I can't come with you. Because when you die, I plan to remarry. So the first wife represents, all of our material things. Like they're given away to other people, as other people's possessions. And then the second wife comes in, and he says, "My dear wife, I'm going to the afterlife. Please come with me." And she said, "Actually, I can't come with you because, I don't want to go. But don't worry, I'll make all the arrangements for your funeral, and I'll make sure everything goes very nicely, and I'll take care of you up until then." And those represent our relatives. They can only be with us up until a certain point, and then they're gone as well. We have to leave them. But then the very last wife comes in and says, "No matter what happens," and this is the wife that he neglected the most, "I will go with you wherever you go." So this last wife is like the super soul, Krishna within the heart. No matter where we go, Krishna goes with us throughout many lifetimes, in many, many different life forms. Even the insects that are living right now in your eyebrows, and trust me, there are insects living in your eyebrows. You can't get rid of them, they're there. Each one of them has Krishna in their heart, just like you do. So, in the same way, the devotee always has Krishna in his heart, but the devotee is in contact with Krishna. And that is the difference. And because the devotee is in contact with Krishna, the devotee is experiencing this happiness and this reciprocation. And they always feel that Krishna is right there with them, protecting them. And it's not so much that when I say Krishna protects them, Krishna doesn't always protect the material body, because the material body is temporary. But what Krishna protects is our Krishna consciousness, is us as a soul, always putting us in the situation that is best for us. So, one moment. So yeah, that is the point of this these two texts here. Are there any questions or comments? We'll stop here. Yes, Prabhu.
Fantastic class. That was like pure nectar. This is so nice.
It's been a while. I didn't think I still had it.
Yeah.
I did it. That was Prabhupada, man.
Wonderful class. Just wanted to say how nice it was to hear the nice Mahabharata pastimes, and there's so many, instances of Krishna protecting his devotees. It's kind of innumerable, throughout the Bhagavatam. There's so many nice examples like Prahlad Maharaj, and so I just wanted to share how nice I thought the class was. It was great.
Thank you so much.
He's really serious that all that needs to be said.
Yeah, it's there are so many instances in the Bhagavatam. Sometimes things can be arranged, Krishna, he's always with his devotee, always protecting his devotee. Sometimes the devotee has to go through some stuff first, like Chitraketu, It's so that if you probably ask him what his turning point was, he'll say, when I lost my son. Because, he wanted this, he really, really wanted to have a son. And finally, the sage tells him, okay, you're going to have a son that'll he'll be Harsha Shoka. Harsha Shoka is happiness and distress. So he had this son, and then the other wives got envious, and then they poisoned the son. But then later, that led to him ultimately hearing transcendental knowledge and getting this detachment. So I've actually heard it said that whenever in life, when we get some material happiness, we should think of it like Harsha Shoka. That's the material world. There's going to be some happiness but there's also going to be some distress mixed in. That is the nature here. You can't get permanent material happiness. But when he actually became realized, that's when he became fully and completely satisfied. And even then, he still had a little bit to burn off after after he heard this great transcendental knowledge, because, when he was flying over and he saw Lord Shiva sitting with Parvati on his wife, and he laughed at him, there was a slight part of him that thought he was a little bit better. So he had to therefore then kind of burn that off a little bit, and then he had to become Vriteshwara. But ultimately, in the end, Krishna always protects the devotee.
It's kind of the dichotomy of it is that, Krishna's always protecting the devotee, but he always protected the Pandavas. He always protected them, but they were also going through hell.
Yeah.
Total hell. And, but Krishna was always there. And they, ultimately Kunti says, because you were all this hardship, I'd take it again and again because I want to, it makes me closer to you. But, Prahlad Maharaj also was going through total hell. And Chitraketu had to become Vritrasura and literally go to hell.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a dichotomy.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
Yeah, Lavanga, that was, I don't know if I'd heard that parable before about the different wives. It kind of reminded me of the Super Soul speaking to Queen Vidarbhi and later in this canto. But, where is that?
It's like one of the, I heard it a long time ago. It's one of the ancient, I think Japanese sayings or something like that.
Oh, it's from another culture.
Yeah, it's from another culture, but it just kind of applies,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that kind of applies to Krishna consciousness. So
Well, that culture believes in transmigration because
transmigration. I think it might be even like a Buddhist saying or something.
Okay, thanks. Oh, one more thing. We had the thing about in that parable, the wife, was it that parable? The one where, or no, you were just saying how in your family, how about the money, wanting the person's money. We had that happen when Donna Cayley was passing away. We had her youngest son, I think it was her youngest son, was calling and claiming that he was her favorite son. And I think it was Sandamani said, "But where you been for the past 40 years?
Yeah. She had
Why weren't you taking care of her now?" Yeah. So he had no claim, but that he tried. He gave it a try.
I mean, it didn't even one of Prabhupada's own kids try to claim ISKCON as his birthright after Prabhupada left. So yeah, these things happen. It's amazing when you have some well-thinker dying, how many relatives will just come out of the woodwork. Yeah. Yes.
We were talking about the painfulness that seems to be quite often required for the devotee to examine their heart. And that Franciscan monk Richard Rohr, he was saying that most often pain is required to just dislodge our false ego. And I was thinking in the Gita when Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, you'll cross over all obstacles by my grace. But if you do not work in such consciousness, but instead act through false ego, not hearing me, you'll be lost. So there's a Bhaktivinoda Swami was giving this talk about there's some childhood, what do you call it, upaya, the rituals, where they pierce the child's ear. But he was saying it's not really literally piercing the ear. It's the idea of initiation is that you pierce the false ego so that the disciple can hear, and you have to, supplicate submit yourself to the guru to hear. But it just seems like this theme is just repeatedly described how, in order to dislodge the false ego, in order for us to hear, that there's an opening, there's a crack, when there's this suffering, and then we're able to actually hear, because the false ego is dislodged, at least to some extent, maybe not completely, but there's a break, and then you can actually hear
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that about the ear piercing ritual. Yeah, yeah. I mean, your false ego has to be kind of cracked open before you can be receptive. So, smashed one way or another. Thank you for.
Yeah.
All right, it's about time for breakfast. But is there any last question or comment? All right, Dhantaraj Shiva Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Drake.